Ja, hier sind
Hartmut Gieselmann
und Volker Zotha und wir werden gleich Jordan Rudess von Dream Theater interviewen. Der ist ein sehr, sag ich mal, experimentierfreudiger, oder?
Keyboarder, der aber auch technisch einiges auf dem Kasten hat. Er hat seine eigene App-Software-Entwicklung und arbeitet mit Roli, einem Keyboard-Hersteller, zusammen. Und jetzt werden wir ihn gleich mal fragen, was es mit der Technik alles so auf sich hat und was wir in den nächsten Jahren noch von ihm hören werden.
What is your role? My role with Roli. I am the head of music experience.
So, and what does it mean?
What the hell does that mean?
What does that mean?
So basically I'm a consultant for Roli. I work for them part-time, although I'm listed on their website. I have an official title. I'm very connected with the Roli guys, and especially with the gentleman who started the company, Roland Lamb. He and I go back already a few years from when he started the whole kind of procedure of bringing this company to life, and we connected very deeply because of some real common goals, and started to work together. And so he knows that I'm very, very busy with my career, but I have a very strong interest and vision for these type of instruments. So he brought me in as a consultant and gave me this role and this title to stay involved and to advise. So that's kind of what it is.
What was the goal of Roli? Was it just to make a sort of cheaper version of the Haken Continuum keyboard, or what you wanted to achieve with the Seaboard?
Well, the exciting thing about the Seaboard is that Roland's original design took the idea of a traditional keyboard, the form factor of a keyboard, and it brought it into a completely different dimension. And what I mean by that is that you have an instrument like a keyboard that can be almost described as like on-off keys, function like on-off switches. I mean, this is a Roger Lynn kind of way to describe it. Right. And even though I'm a classical pianist, that's where it all started. I still see it as that as well. You're pressing the key down and you're lifting the key up. There's magic there if you play the piano very beautifully by how you control the dynamics and shaping the sound. However, the basic mechanics are on and off. So the fact that Roland Lamb was able to come up with a design that actually made keyboard control more like a violin or a human voice or a wind instrument is kind of amazing. And it's almost like the opposite approach. So he opened up the world of that kind of expression, that kind of real-time, continuous expression to keyboard players, which I was looking at, and I was going for that in other ways when I met him. I was going for it in the various apps that I make with my company, Wizdom Music, doing things like MorphWiz, where you had a vertical grid and you could control the sound and have your finger on the pulse of the sound at every moment, but you're doing it in a different way than a keyboard. So and of course, I love the possibility and the definition of playing keys to get your diatonic notes, but I also love the idea of being able to play fretlessly, smoothly sliding, and be able to control timbre in a continuous fashion. So when I saw the Seaboard, I was like, oh my God, this is really fantastic. I want to be involved in this project. So that's how it came about. And I think the Seaboard is a really important instrument because, the Continuum is a fantastic instrument, but it's using a form factor that's very unfamiliar to people. And a flat surface is very difficult to get any kind of tactile feedback from it. If you close your eyes and you try to play the Continuum, you'll be lost in seconds. Or if you're playing on stage with your eyes open and the light changes, one time I was playing and it was very bad because I was in the middle of a big cool solo. Next second the lighting guy did something with a certain light and the whole thing reversed. The colors reversed. So I was screwed. So with the Roli offering that kind of continuous independent expression of every note in a keyboard form factor is a major concept in itself, for many reasons, one of which I just described, but also because it's the first instrument that I've played out of all the different kind of experimental things like Continuum, Eigenharp, Axis 64, Linstrument. It's the first one that is like coming from the center, and I think can really open up the world to the possibility of having instruments like this that use the technology in a way to control music. It's so important, And I know Roli is also being very aggressive about getting the rest of the world to kind of play along with them and making the synthesizers also respond to this individual kind of, channel information, which is kind of what it's all about. Every time your finger goes down on a key, it's sending out on a different MIDI channel, and every motion you make, it's really a separate line of information, of which, there are some synthesizers that will receive that now, but other people are becoming aware, and that it's going to be a very important thing, and they should make their synthesizers be nice for instruments like the Seaboard and what's coming in the future. So
what I recognize when we tried the Seaboard, that it's all black and dark, and if you have not much light, it's quite hard to see where are the diatones on
I totally agree.
Where the white keys would normally be.
Yeah.
So was that a purpose by design, or was it just?
Here's what I think. I'm glad you said that, because it brings up a point that not many people are talking about that I think is important. And even though I work for the company, I'm like a realist in terms of this, and it's my job to say things maybe that people don't want to hear. What's happening with the Seaboard is that it was only, like 4 years ago or something like that, when Roland was pouring the silicone in his art class at school. Right? He was trying an experiment, and it was a very cool experiment. It was all black, and then he had the intelligence and the vision and the energy to create a company to make it happen. So they proceeded down this road of trying to build a successful version of what he started. And when you go down a road with technology, I'm sure you guys know from your experience, looking at products and in the business, but you go down a road, it takes a lot of focus and money and people to continue on one path. So they started on this path of bringing this to life, and they got so far, and then it's kind of like, when I would go to the company and say, well, this is amazing, this is beautiful, but it's kind of all black, and it's a little hard to tell the difference between the black notes and the white notes. Well, what can you do at that point? This awareness is important for the future, when it's possible to have a team working on the next development. Maybe there's some kind of lights, or maybe there's more consideration about the color, or maybe there's more information on the ribbon. There's so many possibilities, and of course my world, coming from the app world where everything is visual, is kind of all about that. I want to see as much information as possible. I want to feel as much information as possible. And Roland Lamb is certainly an incredibly smart guy. He's totally aware of this. But we're going down a road. We've come up with something that's amazing and cool. Yes, it's kind of black and a little hard to see, but think about about the amazing things it does, and how it's such an important instrument to open up, to be accepted, embraced by all of us, and so we can go forward and get to whatever's going to happen in 3-5 years. For the next level of this, which I'm so impatient, but I need it to be there already. So.
Our impression was that the Roli Seaboard is cool as an extra keyboard, but I wouldn't change it for my master keyboard, because there are some sounds that you can play on a Roli very well, but for other sounds like piano sounds, a normal keyboard is better. So wouldn't it be a suggestion, take a normal keyboard and put like touch strips on them to just have the filter cut off on these strips or something? Or how do you use the Roli, and for what?
Yes, those are all good topics too. I have a very good friend, Andrew McPherson, and some other people I've met along the way that are working with, and even in some of the universities that are working with touch strips that go on the keyboard. Maybe you've even seen some instruments. There was actually a German designer that was working on something like this I met 4 years ago. The problem with putting it's a great idea, and it's appreciated, any kind of extra control. The problem is that on a traditional keyboard, the black keys are thinner than the white keys. So when you start to do vibrato left to right, you're literally going off the sides of the key. That's where the Seaboard is much better for that kind of thing. You get a lot of, feeling underneath your finger when you're pressing down and when you're going side to side. And even the distance is the same for an octave. It's exactly the same as a piano. So that's good that he engineered it so the black keys and the white keys are the same size, but the distance is the same. That was smart. But yeah, so the work that we have to do, the answer is in multiple segments. So the work we have to do is to make it more possible for somebody like myself, who spent my whole life playing the piano, since it isn't a form factor. Why not try to figure out how to make it more playable from a real pianistic point of view, as well as have the features that it has. I would say, so that's something that I'd like to see happen, that I'm already thinking about in terms of my participation, in the future. But at the same time, the Seaboard is a different instrument that's based on the piano form factor. And when I present it to people personally, and I think kind of it's a little hard for the company, but I think they also do, it's an evolution of the piano keyboard. It's not a replacement. I'm sure some of the sales team would like to say it's just, forget about that, just, play this. It's not realistic, especially at this point. What is realistic is that they built this amazing thing. It's based on a piano type form factor, and it does what it does. But it is important for people to understand that in its present form, you're going to want to play different kinds of things. Somebody who plays the piano could walk over to it and, and depending who they are, 20 minutes, 2 hours, 2 days, they could understand, where you're supposed to press the notes and get pretty far, much further than some instrument like, some of the other ones we mentioned that is like a completely different world. But yeah, it's an evolution. It's different. You want to play different things. I'm not going to try to play a Chopin etude on it, or maybe I would for practice. Actually, what I do personally is I'm getting the more I play it, the more comfortable I become with it, of course. But there's a lot of getting used to the accuracy, because the distance between the black, not only the color idea, but the height difference between the black keys and the white keys is not that great. So if you put your hand down on it with your eyes closed, it's not immediate like a piano. On a piano, I could put my hand down, and in a moment, I could say exactly where I am. On the Seaboard, I'm like, am I touching an F sharp or a C sharp? I'm not sure. So those kind of things, those kind of tactile feedback ideas make it a little harder. So on the new Dream Theater album, I used it to play one of the really cool leads. I use it for a lot of things, but in the Dream Theater world, I'll use it right now. I used it for a lead. And I think it came out really, really well, because there's this cool fluidity to the sound where I'm able to play the definite diatonic pitches, but also slide between them at will in a way that, you don't really hear very much. Maybe if you look at a guitar player like a Steve Vai or a Jeff Beck, who has master control of their whammy bar, you get close to that kind of concept. But other than that, you don't hear people playing this way. So the Seaboard functions exactly like what I kind of musically have been wanting for years, to have that perfect mixture between piano articulation and also being able to slide smoothly as like a fretless guitar or something like, or a trombone or something like that. So that's the way that I love to use it. Of course, the instrument also will respond to your vertical touch, so you can do all kinds of interesting things with the timbre, independent for every note that you play, and with pressure and all this stuff. But if you just take the control of pitch alone, wow, amazing, to be able to play leads like that, or anything, this vibrato, it's...
You see it more as a new instrument or as an imitation of a string instrument or so, or are you going to use new unique sounds, or are you trying to imitate a guitar or something?
My mindset is that I'm looking to create new things. Like I want to be able to take the Seaboard and give it its own voice. I just actually had a lunch meeting with one of the sound designers that I work with, and we were talking about the Seaboard, and I was saying, my main interest in having him involved is I want to do everything we can to give the Seaboard its own unique voice, because it is its own instrument. It's different than anything else, so it should have its own sound. I would love it ideally for when people play the Seaboard, they even think of a particular sound. Like maybe it could be like a lead sound, like the one I'm using, or maybe it's something that we developed that's even more unique, and you say, what is that? Is it a guitar? Is it a keyboard? What, I can't tell, but it's a Seaboard. That would be great if we could find that. And since the company is new and people are just starting to create sounds, as a matter of fact, we just got in a whole bunch of sounds from interesting programmers. I think we're going to get there.
Yeah. And the Seaboard, you also mentioned it's using all 16 MIDI channels, so it's quite complicated to connect it to another synthesizer, a hardware synthesizer, because you need multi-timbral
That's the whole thing. That's exactly the topic I was speaking of.
The question would be, wouldn't it be then an idea to make a synthesizer with this sort of keyboard with its own a sound engine beneath it?
Absolutely. Well, that's what Roli's mission is they're going now and they're having meetings with everybody. Different companies are signing on, like Apple and Moog, and everybody's realizing that they need to support the the continuous independent channel idea that the Seaboard and other instruments put forth.
Will we see a new protocol that will be a follow-up on the meeting?
I think so, and I think so. Like we had a meeting at the NAMM show recently, where we met with the whole MIDI Association, and I played for them, and we spoke about this new protocol. So we're hoping that it gets put forth, and everybody is accepting it, and it's one of the big challenges, especially to get the big companies, Korg, Yamaha, Roland, to play along with this. But I think that there's no avoiding it at this point. So
does the new protocol has a name?
MPE, I think is what they call it. I'm not sure what they're talking about. Expressive MIDI. I'm not sure that they've settled on a particular name, but the last time I checked in with everybody, it was at least the beta name or whatever was expressive MIDI.
So still MIDI is in the background of all that.
Yeah. I think it would have to be it's MIDI information, just used in a different way.
You're also programming your own apps for the iPad, so we can maybe switch to the
to the touch interfaces.
We can do that. Yes, absolutely. So I have a company called Wizdom Music that I've had for a number of years right now. That I started out of my own desire to do different things with expression and to do things with multi-touch, which. The short story is when I saw the Lemur years ago, and then when I tried the first iPhones, I was like, oh my God, there's so many interesting things one could do with this. So I kept my eye really on the Apple space and all the people who were making the initial apps for that store, and I found a guy who I reached out to. His name is Kevin Chartier, and we became partners. And the first thing we worked on was an app called MorphWiz, and that was a big success, and it won the Billboard Best App award for the year we put it out, which was very exciting, and it's kind of just kicked off my business in the app space. And for me, it wasn't. I didn't get into it for business reasons. I got into it because I wanted to play with these kind of toys, and it became something that was a nice little side business as well. And but the cool thing about it all is I get to work with very interesting developers around the world on cool ideas that I have, or maybe they started and I can relate to. It's always a little different depending on who I'm working with. And now, since I started at the beginning of the App Store, even though it's changed a lot, the big companies have all gotten involved. The relationships that I have with the consumer and also with Apple is such that if I can release a cool product, which of course I try to do, it gets attention and people know about it and they'll check it out, which is great. It's a nice advantage. So I can call up a developer and say, hey, do you want to work on this? We'll put it out through Wizdom Music, and they could be excited about that idea. So lately I've been working with the guys out of Karma, which is the electronic music lab at Stanford University in California, and working with Julius Smith, who is one of the kind of fathers of physical modeling, and his partners in a company called Moforte. We did a nice collaboration, which we released through Wizdom Music only a couple months ago, maybe 3 months ago at this point. That's called GeoShred. Yeah, this is my latest app, and it's been really, really fun to get that in this app space because it is an app that uses the technology of physical modeling, which of course people know about, but it's never become extremely popular because it's difficult to totally harness the model to make it so it's a really musical experience. Yamaha, Korg, they played with it, but it's never become what it probably should be. But at any rate, so we decided that within our app, we would put physical modeling into it and also develop the technology even a little bit more. And the app is all about the physical model, but it's also about taking this very unique playing surface idea that I developed with Rob Fielding, who's another developer who I used to work with, which is an extremely playable playing surface idea on the iPad and combining the two to create a real instrument for the device. So right now it's only available on an iPad. I actually brought it here just in case we wanted to check it out.
This will answer your question regarding the iPad Pro, I think.
Are you using the advantages of the larger display of the iPad Pro?
We do. We actually have formatted it, not specifically for, but we made it so it looks great on the iPad Pro as well, which is a nice thing. From the normal iPad. It's the same version, but it's just formatted a little bit differently to be attractive and look nice. Yeah. So, you can show us something. Yeah. So, well, let's see. So,
do you use this in the concert?
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So take a look at that.
Yeah, I'll play something else and then explain a couple things that are really cool about it. So.
So is John jealous when you can play this on?
He thinks it's really, really cool. Yeah, I mean, it is. Yeah, I think there's no doubt it's cool. And you can do different things. I mean, how could you on a guitar if you go all these kind of bends would be very, very hard to do. Maybe possible, but really difficult. So what's happening on this is that, it's funny because what I think is the success of this application is that some of the things that we did that are more simple are the things that are like instantly appealing and important. And then there's a lot of depth to it behind the scenes as well. Yeah. So what I mean specifically is that, I'll turn it down just a little bit so we don't freak out the hotel.
Too progressive.
Yeah, right. So what happens is, you have this interesting note layout, which it can be basically tuned any way you want. Right now I have it in fourths. Yeah. I'll turn it up a little bit so you can hear it.
It looks a bit like the Ableton Push.
Oh, a little, or like the instrument. Yeah, I did a demo for that. Yeah, sure, I know about it. So you have fourths, right? Yeah. You could change it to fifths. Every row can be completely tuned the way you want it to be. Right now it's more like a bass guitar or a guitar, or like it could be like a violin in fifths, anything. So you have chromatic across. And when I play, even if I'm looking at you, every time my finger goes down, it's an absolute diatonic pitch, no matter where I press. It's perfectly in tune. But as soon as I...
How long do you need to train to get used to a new user interface like this? Because your apps always have these crazy user interfaces.
Yeah. Well, this one I find is, well, of course, I'm the developer of this, so for me it's easy. But I find for guitar, people who play keyboards and some guitar, it's very easy because it's totally like a guitar. The spacing is exactly like it. And if you're a violinist, I'll change it to fifths, and then it'll be exactly like a violin. Okay. So if you're a keyboardist, just a keyboardist might take the most getting used to, because then you have to think a little bit differently. Yeah. But I gave it to my friend who's the keyboard player of Haken. He's playing it amazingly. Like it's incredible. And some of my other keyboard player friends, are incredible at it. So it's not that hard. And a lot of keyboard players have touched a guitar as well. So because the action is.
It takes just a few days to get used to it and play it in a concert.
It depends on who you are and what your background is. Okay. If you've never thought about vibrato on a note and you're just a classical pianist or something like that, or even a player who's never used the pitch wheel, you might be like not knowing what to do. But if you've played a guitar and or a lead and a synthesizer, well then you'll take to it faster. So I think the learning curve can be pretty fast, depending on where you come from.
Okay.
But I think it's worth it because there's so much cool stuff you can do. And one of the things that you can do on this, well, I wanted to finish the other concept, which is that, so I was saying, you know, diatonic, if you just land, and then it's totally smooth sliding if you slide, but that's cool. So, but there's a little bit more to it than that. The fact that it is exactly in pitch when you land is the initial snap of the note, where the initial touch is tuned, even if I'm left or right of center.
Okay.
But when you slide from point A to point B, let's say I slide from C to G, so the initial press is perfectly in tune. When I slide and stop, that's in tune as well.
Okay.
So how is it done?
Yeah.
That's where the programming magic comes into play, and the vision also comes into play. Because what I learned in my years with the Continuum and Lippold-Haken is that fine, initial is great, but when you slide to a spot, you want it to be in tune as well. And if it's not, then it starts sounding really messed up. So we started to work on a technology of rounding that looked at your stopping point, and then you can adjust the speed that it will kind of pull into pitch as well. So the beauty of this is the kind of magic speed, if you will, that it's not even noticeable to go, right?
Yeah,
you don't hear. I mean, my finger's not exactly in the center. Even if I overshoot it, you don't. It sounds perfect each time, which is a good trick and very musical.
Could you also do different scales, like Indian scales, for example, which don't have these 12 halftone steps? Or
an update. Right now it's
okay.
diatonic. Yeah. My app Geosynthesizer, which is where this comes from, we dealt with things that were in quarter steps and changing the tuning, because the original guy who I worked with on the Surface was all about that. Okay. But I, you know, as someone who grew up playing the piano, I decided that, and wanting to have a business, I said, you know what, let's just focus on just getting the diatonic, you know, steps correct, and you can highlight any scale that you want. But as far as working in quarter tones and that kind of thing, not yet. But we would like to have that.
You are not the programmer, but you say, okay, I want this user interface, put it that way, and or what is your role in development?
Well, I'm the president of Wizdom Music, and my role is kind of the top-level musician, vision person. I'm also not the one who invented physical modeling, so I'm working with these amazing guys who know all about physical modeling, and we can work together to make sure that this becomes a musical experience, and that's my role, to say, guys, this doesn't feel right. I don't like having this button here because every time I'm playing here, I knock into it and it's not good. I need the octave switches to be larger. You know, all the things that make this a playable instrument, and all the decisions about what things are called, named, where they're placed, how it plays, what it sounds like. This is my kind of like specialty and my role.
Okay. At the moment, you only program for iOS. Where do you see the Android system? Is it taking up to iOS system in forms of music software, or is Google still years behind?
Well, we're very interested in the Android system, and you know, with Wizdom Music, I've done some things for Android. It's been challenging because Android is all over the place, and every company has a different version of the software. Makes it very difficult for all my programmers to really work with that system. So that's why there's a limited number of music apps on Android. It's just hard. It's just difficult to make something that works on all the different devices. That being said, is I went along with my partners over to Google, and we had a nice sit down to talk and to show them what we're doing, and they're very, very supportive and kind of following the ride that we're on. And we're also working with some assistants porting this to Android now, just to kind of begin the process, because, you know, I think that at some point people will figure it out, and you know, there'll be an intelligence kind of over the whole Android world that will enable all the people out there who want to use Android to be able to make music as easily as the people who use you know, the Apple stuff. So I'm, you know, I use this because as a musician, as somebody who likes to play with all the toys, this is where they all are. And all my guys who program tell me that this is a much more reasonable environment to program on. So, you know, and I can make some money for the company, so I can continue doing this work with Apple stuff, which is harder for me on Android. So,
in my experience, when I compare a normal computer to an iOS system, it's always that all the music apps, they have a little bit of larger latency to it, and it's a little bit harder to get all the good effects on it. But Apple, they now have also this audio unit plugin system. Have you worked with that, and what do you think about where can the latency power go of the system?
Well, I mean, more and more the iOS system is becoming like your computer, only it's, you know, in this form factor. So we're getting there, which is cool. But also, you know, Apple is a company that, I remember years ago I went to do a presentation, a speech for the Microsoft convention, and I saw all the new computers. This has to be like, I don't know, was it 4 years ago and something like that? All of them were touch screens,
yeah, so
all the
Windows
computers.
8, when Windows
Right?
8 was available, yeah. So it should.
And I was like, oh my God, like,
Yeah.
this is crazy, because as an Apple user, like, why isn't my screen a touch screen? So now, and Apple still doesn't do that, right? But instead they're making their devices kind of catch up with the computers, and, you know, it's a different kind of a school of thought. So that's just a very interesting, it's interesting that, you know, Windows would be kind of ahead in one way, but anyway, but the audio units, all that, I see the developers more and more interested, like the guys who I work with here are thinking about how to always use the newest technology, inter-app audio, audio bus, all these ways of kind of getting things to be interconnected, which in a way is very, very cool, and musicians, of course, want as much power as possible, but the platform always has to catch up with it to make the experience enjoyable. I mean, my favorite thing to do as like a simple musician is to call up, you know, GeoShred and just have the sound. I love the fact that the sound is coming out of this. I'm playing on this. I don't have to think about this is somehow mysteriously connecting to something else, and or it's going wirelessly to over there, and it's easier. It's just more fun. You know, I just pick it up and I play. It's I guess it's similar to like somebody picking up a violin. I'm just playing. You know, they don't want complication when they're trying to make music. It's hard enough to be able to, you know, to be able to play the music. So
how do you record it in your studio? Do you just have it wirelessly connected to your DAW, or how do you?
So the way that I use it in the studio, that I've been using it in the studio, is I have the new iConnect interface. It's like spacing out on the name of it, but it's the brand new iConnect interface. And they make great interfaces, and I use that, and I connect it directly out of the lightning port into there, and then it goes into my into Logic, which I use, and I can record it digitally. So, and it sounds great. And on stage, I just literally take the audio out. It's like, it sounds fine.
Yeah, okay.
Sounds awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
So
this is from musicians, because normally the hi-fi enthusiasts say, "Oh, never use any analog output
Sounds
or
great.
something."
Yeah. Sounds
I
really
think so,
good.
yeah.
I mean, maybe from a purist point of view. First of all, I'm blowing a wild lead with distortion, and you know, I don't think anybody's going, "Oh my God," you know, like some purist standing up and walking out, you know, at that point.
You will see it.
Any analog synthesizers
Stage.
or in your studio, or
I
digital plugins, or
I have my Mini Moog and, you know, some various toys from years ago. I tend to, the more time kind of marches on, the more I'm working in the box.
Okay.
My keyboards are wonderful. I love them. I can hug them, you know, but I don't use them that much anymore.
Okay.
So, but I have my, you know, collection from the years of playing and that I like to keep around.
Because we see there's a sort of renaissance of these analog devices.
And I think it's cool, but, you know, having grown up with the instruments, I'm not as interested in going backwards. I'm interested in moving forwards, and what can we do with sound that hasn't been done before? How can we shape it and model it and morph it, you know, to using the technology that's been developing all this time. So I instead of looking back, I'm looking forward.
Yeah.
So what are you still missing on your musical journey then, in instrument-wise?
Well, you know, like we were talking before about the way that things work in terms of the Seaboard is a great example. We know that there's so much that can happen with it, and I want that tomorrow, but it's going to take some time.
Yeah.
So I'm continuing kind of my journey for expression, and one of the things is to be able to put like my piano technique together with my interest in that kind of expression and make it as powerful as possible. So that's one of the areas that I'd like to work on. Okay. So it's partly kind of a personal journey of expression, but also to help to offer people this power that I know is possible in sometimes what can be simple form factors. So I have some interesting app stuff that I'm, starting on that takes some very advanced synthesis concepts, but will offer it in very kind of simple ways, which I think are kind of a cool way to think.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah.
Good, guys.
Very
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for the good questions.
Thank you.
Okay.